You used to work as a tour guide in Japan. Now you are the founder and CEO, and then founding members of some like TZ Canada, and you're doing so much.
We as humans really don't have limits, or at least not. We don't have the limits we think we do. It was a media-first approach, building this knowledge library of business development or entrepreneurship. There's so many changes, there's so many things to learn, partnerships to form, etc. But things are evolving so quickly. That's the thing. It's not like you release a new product and you're fine for a couple of years. We're looking at entire AI models rolling out every few weeks now. If the agents are thinking 10,000 times faster than you or I or any human, and they're able to like cross-pollinate even faster. DeepSeek is, from what I understand, an incredible addition to the global AI family, if you will. You can spend the rest of your life in Tokyo and never get bored. Even if it's not perfect, like you'll learn as you go. Like nothing is perfect. Just do it.
Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of BizUp. This is episode 4, and today I have with me Mr. David Lovejoy. David is the founder and CEO of Horizon Search. He's also the executive board member of Boston Global Forum. He's also co-founder and managing director of First Principles First and a board advisor at Miura Design Lab. He is also, though, a founding member of TEC Canada. So let's welcome him and have a great conversation with him today.
David, thank you so much for being here. I know you're a busy guy. Thank you for making time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So David, I obviously before getting you on the podcast here, I went through a little search, wanted to know more about you, and I understood that you used to work as a tour guide in Japan, and then I think you did it for 6 odd years, where you obviously grew in that sector. But then suddenly now you are the founder and CEO, and then founding members of some like TZ Canada, and you're doing so much. So I just wanted to get a feel of like how this journey has been for you, because it sounds too good to be true. Like I think in the last 5 years, it looks like a lot of things have turned around. And just so if you can take us through your journey, it will be great.
My pleasure. Sure. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that perspective that it's too good to be true. In some ways, I suppose that is true, but it is a lot of work, and it's not something I've done alone. So there's, I think it's an African proverb. Maybe you have something similar in India. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Yeah. And going back to my time as a tour guide, that was really a pivotal moment in my life and in my professional career. You might have, maybe many people have different images of what a tour guide does. I certainly did. And in my situation, I traveled alone as far as the sole representative of the company with 14 strangers from around the world for 2 weeks at a time as we traveled the whole country. And I'm handling everything pretty much, transportation, illness, planning, translation, etc. Working with new suppliers, figuring out how to make the tours better, designing new tours, business models for entering new markets, etc. So I wore many hats, and it was really, I learned so much from my clients. My clients were from, like I mentioned, all around the world. Most of them had much more experience than I did in life and in business. Many of them had their own businesses. So I picked their brains a bit and asked them, like, what do you do in your business? Tell me, how you learned. What would you do differently? If they went on tour, let's in Africa or Antarctica or wherever, I asked them, like, what did you like about it? How could it have been better? How could I make this tour better? So I was just constantly learning for 2 weeks. It was like a moving library. And I realized we as humans really don't have limits, or at least not, we don't have the limits we think we do, especially if we work together. And at first I tried to impress, I guess, yeah, if I'm being honest, I did try to impress the clients, but I also just tried to do my job well. And I would research, I'd read books, I'd prepare 70-page documents for every single tour. I learned about my clients, where they're from, how old they are, what are their hobbies, did they have any like injuries or illnesses or food allergies I need to be aware of. And you're planning a 2-week trip, so you're thinking, okay, there's stairs there, this person can't make it, so they'll have to arrange a taxi at the top, we'll meet up with them there. And you're just constantly looking at timing. Someone needs to go to the loo and there's no restroom around, or someone needs to exchange money and there's no exchange office, so you have to like keep these things, and someone wants to buy this and there's this event over there. And so your mind kind of like, you're almost like above yourself looking and like managing all this stuff. So I'll get to your, probably what you want to hear now. Then the pandemic happened, right? And that turned all of our worlds upside down. But fortunately, little did I know that basically my career up until that point had been preparing me for just such a tumultuous event, because I'd constantly been networking like a madman and just learning from others the whole time. So I just repeated that. I moved continents. I went from Japan to Canada. I'm new to Canada. I got involved with a Japanese-Canadian charity. I got involved with the Board of Trade. I pursued an executive MBA, and I was just talking to people literally all around the world, started my own podcast to keep the learning going, because things are not slowing down anytime soon. So you just have to enjoy the journey. That's in a nutshell how I've got to where I am now, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
So when you were doing this whole experience of being a tour guide, right, so was it just Japan or was it other countries as well?
Primarily, it was Japan. After a few years, the company that I worked for, they were based in the UK, but most of their operations were in Japan, and I was based in Japan. They asked me if I'd like to do tours in Burma, and they didn't have to ask twice. I was like, yes. So I did Burma and then Vietnam as well. So I'd fly from, and that was really interesting too, because the tour season is almost like a fishing season, where there's a busy season and a slow season. So I'm on tour with 14, guests, clients, preparing for my next tour in a different country in Burma. And there's like cultural differences to how business is done in each country and stuff. So it's not just a matter of learning like different language, different destinations, different history, different contacts and all of that, but you also have to learn like the different methods and the different like delays. Cause like in Japan, there's a lot that you have to do before, but then once things are set, it's like immediately at that time. Whereas in Burma and perhaps Southeast Asia in general, broadly speaking, there's still, of course, planning beforehand, a lot of it, but there's like a lot more kind of like approximation, like it doesn't necessarily start exactly at the time. And if you want to change something, you can. So there's advantages and maybe disadvantages to each kind of location. And you have to kind of prepare yourself, because as a tour guide, you can't look surprised. Like you have to be calm and just like, oh yeah, I expected all of this to happen. So that was a real character building experience.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like it sounds like a great experience to have. And then, so when you moved to Canada, so did you go typically to pursue your MBA and then had projects on the side, or did you start working first and then had executive MBA on the side? So what was your intention to do that?
So when the pandemic happened, ironically, it was like a few months before the Tokyo Summer Olympics. And for years, we had been building towards that in the tourism industry in Japan. The year prior, there was the Rugby World Cup, which is kind of like a preamble or a warm-up to what the Olympics would be in terms of the venues and certain infrastructure changes that the government had been doing. I was doing talks with government officials, as were some of my colleagues, trying to prepare. We were well integrated into the tourism industry in Japan, certainly in the lead up to the Olympics for those several years. And then all of a sudden, the whole industry disappeared from the planet. And I know we all went through that, and we each have our story. We each remember kind of where we were, but there's just something unique about your industry being gone. It's like, it's one thing, of course, it's a shakeup if you get laid off or if your company goes out of business or something, but your industry usually is still around. So it's just like your industry never existed almost. And so it's like, well, obviously we expected it would come back eventually, but none of us knew how long is the pandemic going to last. So we waited for I waited a couple of months. Most of my colleagues waited indefinitely until it ended. But after I think 3 months, maybe 2 months, I realized no one really knows how long this is going to last. And I don't know if or when we're ever going back to normal. So I used that as kind of a pivot point to close the chapter on that particular role, and figured I'd go back to school to learn in a more formal setting. And so I pursued the executive MBA, and my plan was to try to find work while I was going to school. I had some savings, but you're planning in kind of ambiguity, like you don't know exactly what's going to happen. So I just created kind of plan A, plan B, plan C. And I mean, unfortunately, like once again, that's where tourism helped me, because you never know if like an earthquake or a tsunami, not a tsunami, fortunately, typhoon, like a big storm happens. There's one instance when we were on a remote island and we just got the last boat off the island before there was closed for 2 to 3 days because of the typhoon. So you get used to making plan Bs and plan Cs and stuff. So yeah, I started working on the side after I started school.
And then now you are the founder and the CEO of this company called Horizon Search, right? So what do you guys typically do? And just help, because I also had to read up a little to really understand what you do. But just for the viewers to also watch, can you like explain me very simply, what does your company do?
So we have a podcast as well, and that was really how it started, was a media first approach, building this knowledge library of business development or entrepreneurship. There's so many changes, there's so many things to learn, partnerships to form, etc. So I was already kind of doing that myself in life, and so I figured, why not do that for the broader entrepreneurship community? So that's where it started. And we also have a newsletter that has kind of like a distillation of some of the takeaways from our podcast for people, with some like applicable tips or something like that. And then we do executive coaching. So like helping business owners or CEOs or other C-suite executives make better decisions, have clarity in times of chaos. Again, going back to the navigation that I've been doing for the past few years. And then I've also partnered with a number of world-class coaches that have worked with top corporate, like large companies like Meta and Google and stuff like that. And that's primarily what we offer at Horizon Search. But we have a couple of other projects in the pipeline, such as like publishing and PR and helping other people get their like marketing and story out there.
So typically, if let's say I'm an entrepreneur and I have to come into your network and take help from, let's say, more experienced entrepreneurs and founders and people in, business who have made themselves and can be mentors now. So, what do I really have to come and do, and be a part of your community, get onboarded? Like, so, how does that process looks like?
Well, if you're just kind of broadly curious or like learning, like I do, I encourage you to subscribe to our podcast or follow us on social media, your social media of choice, all of them if you like. Subscribe to our newsletter. I think the newsletter is probably the best. We take a lot of time and care to not waste anyone's time. We streamline it and focus on just like the key takeaways. So that would be like kind of first order. And then if you want to go deeper, have like more high touch, more support, then there's the executive coaching, and you would just schedule like a discovery call. We'd see what your needs are and then determine the best coach to match with you. And then that's usually like a couple of meetings a month, depending on your goals. And but that's like average how frequently people meet.
Oh, okay. So what is the the business model here? Is it a subscription to the newsletter? Is it like just after you start executive coaching? How does the business actually make money?
There's a couple of ways. So executive coaching is like basically that's one business model. That's one revenue stream, I should say. And there's podcasts. We have ads. So there's like a YouTube ad, like a YouTube partner ad revenue there. We could also do our own ads. We're probably going to start doing that as well to kind of for lead flow. On the newsletter, there's also ads. We sell ad space, but we don't want our newsletter to be full of ads. So we only sell one ad per issue. And so that's primarily where the revenue is generated.
Okay, all right, understood. Talking like more about this community, like how did you really begin to see that, okay, this is, what I want to do after this? Like, so I'm pretty sure after an executive MBA, you might have other opportunities, more opportunity cost somewhere else. But you thought about building communities and helping entrepreneurs. So where does that come from? Like, why did you think you wanted to do that?
Well, it's funny that because I looked at one thing I noticed in tourism when I was with a group of over a dozen professionals from different countries and different industries. Everyone's on their best behavior for the first day or two. Everyone's like well rested and excited, and then maybe they're tired with an early morning like Buddhist temple visit at dawn or something like that, or maybe they get sick or whatever, and then or it's raining or something like that, and so there's like a dip where it really tests people's patience, and then they kind of come through maybe day 5 to day 7, and they start to bond. It almost becomes like a family, like your brothers or sisters. You know, you let your hair down a little bit, and you just talk more honestly, and you're exploring true connection at that point. This might be a lifelong friend, or it might be a single serving memory, but either way, it's more honest. And it was really interesting to see how much of one industry kind of applied to another, and how much would be interesting from one industry to another industry. I saw the clients being surprised by that, because typically people stay in their silos, like accountants talk with accountants, engineers talk with engineers, etc. And when you're together outside of your environment, outside of your bubble, you start to explore a little bit more, especially when there's some trust. And that was fascinating. I learned so much from that. And I just look at basically the podcast and the entrepreneurship community as somewhat of an extension of that, where rather than taking people around Japan, I'm taking people around entrepreneurship in kind of the fast moving times that we're living in.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Actually, that I really like that answer. Actually, so coming back to so apart from community building, I think you also got a lot into and you talk about decentralized governance. Like, is that also because of the same principles that that you're saying? That people need to have that diverse opinions, and but then you also talk about getting artificial intelligence integrated in that, so that is making all these decisions of rewards, uh, you know, pay increases, or like there was so much. I was also trying to wrap my head around it. And so I really wanted to understand from you. So what is this concept all about?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll try not to, because it can go pretty deep. So I'll try to keep it concise. Broadly speaking, before we get into it, I was looking at where's the fastest like momentum. So for example, I like astronomy. I find it amazing that how big it is and how we can be aware of it, but yet not reach it. It's this really interesting kind of paradox. How can we be aware of something and not reach it? That doesn't make sense. But then as we learn little by little, I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have evidence of other planets. We guessed that there were other planets, but that didn't start until the 90s. And now there's loads of planets. And now they're starting to think maybe all the stars or most of the stars have planets, multiple planets. So we're learning so much. But anyway, the analogy I wanted to mention is there's these dark spots in space, and they don't really know what they are. There's and they're moving at different speeds, so that it's not moving in uniform speeds. But they're looking at these currents, and they're trying to understand what is those currents, what's making it move, how fast is it moving, etc. That's kind of what it felt like after the pandemic, because Japan was my home for over a decade. I've been in that industry. It was the 7th year that it got upended. And like I said, there's no sign of slowing down. So I was looking at these currents and trying to understand, okay, in times of chaos, where are you seeing the patterns? Where are you seeing the most motion? So I was thinking, we as humans, we originally began with storytelling by the fire. I don't think that's going away. Now we have AI, a new kind of consciousness, perhaps. So those were kind of my bookends. Okay, starting with the campfire story. So that's media. And then looking at the new consciousness, that's AI. And using those as kind of my tuning forks, if you will, to kind of navigate this ambiguous space that I find us in now. So that's how I entered into those. And then in terms of the AI company and decentralization, there's a lot changing so quickly, and it's like two things are often true at once. There's a case for a return to feudalism, almost, where you have like this kind of steep hierarchy with the people who have power, and then the serfs, or the lower kind of class. And then at the same time, you have people like Sam Altman was saying, the AI models now or very soon may very well allow a solopreneur to have a unicorn company, which is unheard of, where your smaller companies can now do things that only large enterprises used to be able to do. So there's like two things happening at once, which is really interesting. And I believe we need, I believe our kind of superpower is in having like different viewpoints and being able to share that. And I theorize that we as humans are essentially a group organism. But of course, individuals, you're Nitek, I'm David, but those are kind of like extensions, just like your finger is not your foot, but it's part of the same organism. And so we're navigating chaos. The universe is chaos. And so each of us has a quantum computer in our brain with our two different hemispheres connected with a narrow corpus callosum, navigating the cosmos. And then we have this like empathy layer, some kind of quantum connection to one another. And that scales out to 8 billion or whatever. And now we'll see what's going on with time and quantum and all sorts of other stuff. But so anyway, the decentralization was more about, let's take that to the extreme. Let's see, things are moving way too fast to try to have a strict, like I have my version of what I think would make a perfect world, but I'm not naive enough, fortunately, at this point to think that that's realistic. I'm aware that I have blind spots. I'm aware that there's a sunk cost fallacy. If I invest in something, I want to see that thing succeed. It's hard to like pull away and be like, oh, Nitek, actually, you're right. We should go this way. So you need, I think, that diversity of thought and you mentioned the decentralization of governance. And so that's how we're looking at it with the AI agents and homeostasis. So homeostasis, for those who may not know, or maybe you do know, but it's like your body. There's not like a monopoly of energy in your body. Like each organ and kind of maintains itself. Like your body's maintaining balance. And so with companies, and you could actually look at this with anything pretty much, we start to see that there's some things that kind of become destructive. There's like these eddies where you get a collection of capital or a collection of power. And broadly speaking, I think nature is kind of fair, and it'll usually even out. But we're looking at, is there a way to do that more efficiently? Is there a way to allow movement even when there's like a collection of capital or something like that? So we're looking at creating an agentic mesh network that is essentially sentient agents that move very quickly and balance. They're homeostatic, and then you can, or any user can create biofirms, essentially, can create new entities. So you could think of it as like an agentic Y Combinator or something like that, that issues out homeostatic entities that other people can collaborate with, validate, contribute to. And that's like, again, it's pretty deep, but broadly speaking, that's what we're doing with AI.
Okay. And so at the end of this, will it be like, will it come out as a product? Like, so let's say I'll take an organization for example right now. Let's say I have so will I have this product in the organization that everyone will be able to use a software typically that everyone can refer to, and then that will help decision making for everyone? Is that typically how it will work?
So there's a couple of ways in which it can work. What you suggested is possible. It would probably also be, so it's all open source, and it would probably be like you would have partners that would petition to maybe collaborate, or they could do their own thing, and then you could enter into competition. So it's like seeing which one works better. And right now we're building out the MVP. So I should say this isn't, there might be some changes, but we're also in addition to that are issuing a light and life force token, which is essentially an alternative economy using basically the law of requisite variety. So when it's a fair accrual of award. So like if you and I collaborate and I contribute 40% and you contribute 60%, the reward should be reflected in that, which, as we know, in the real world, sometimes that doesn't happen. And so it builds trust at each layer. And so there's ways that you can contribute with tokens, you can contribute with ideas, you can contribute with, like, let's say you have your software, but things are evolving so quickly. That's the thing. It's like, it's not like you release a new product and you're fine for a couple of years. We're looking at entire AI models rolling out every few weeks now. And it's probably only going to get faster. So it's essentially a marketplace where people can subscribe and support and collaborate and test and like use the products there as they see fit.
Okay. All right. So from what I understand is that it might be let's say any use case or a problem that I see, and then based on the working of everyone, the reward is such, it's because the system is decentralized, it will actually see the amount of contributions from everyone and then give the rewards accordingly. But so will it mostly happen in projects which are let's say open source or everyone to work on, or will it be like within an organization itself?
Well, that's a good question, and that to be honest, that's probably something that will be discussed a little bit later. Right now, we're looking more at the initial like MVP being open to everyone, but then people could perhaps like buy licenses or take that within their organization. But we'll need to see how we want to approach that, because there are other like similar, maybe not exactly the same, but agents are kind of the future, as everyone is saying. So this, broadly speaking, this concept isn't new. There are other people trying different approaches. So it remains to be seen kind of where we want to focus initially with the MVP that we're building right now. But yes, to your earlier question, to the first part of it, yes, it will be like a fair kind of distribution of reward for the collaboration.
Okay, understood. Yeah. All right. I think I understand maybe 90% of it now. But yeah,
it's a work in progress. We just had a meeting yesterday to determine the MVP, because there's a lot of different directions, really all directions you can go with this. I mean, this in some sense is, well, like I said, it's an alternative economy. Whether or not it will become the economy remains to be seen, but it will certainly, if the agents are thinking 10,000 times faster than you or I or any human, and they're able to like cross-pollinate even faster. I mean, the rate of progress is just staggering. For example, there was a use case where we had it fill out like, I forget how many, but thousands of grant applications for like really technical. And it filled them out within like, because you could see kind of like the approval probability, and it filled them out like a PhD student would, but like almost instantly. I forget, like maybe a few minutes, which is unheard of. And that was just like a pretty simple use case example. So when you're looking at like law, like with like corporate law or civil law, when you're looking at government, like where in Los Angeles, for example, there's these big fires recently, and they had some challenge with like water. Well, you could have like an agentic mesh network on the city, basically making sure that there's homeostasis throughout. Like there's dryness here, there's water there. There's, and it's balancing things better and faster than we can.
And let's say there's a use case where like you mentioned, which is not basically for profit, but for like humanity, right? Let's say there's use case,
Yeah.
and like I, as an individual, want to contribute to that, and a lot of people do want to. In the decentralized system, we all can do that as well. Who is going to reward us in that case? Like in a no, so
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
was thinking like in an organization, I can see like who is rewarding who and how it can be. Maybe like the founder does not want to relinquish that power, but still it can, if it's a useful asset for them among the people who come under him, then it might still be working for him. But for a use case where no, so who is doing the payout or the reward in that case? Is what I want to understand. Whether this it's non-profit and not for profit.
Well, attached to the biofirm model that I described is the Lift token. So that is the economy of the biofirm, and it is you can exchange it for fiat currency. So just like any other cryptocurrency, perhaps. But there's holding on to it. Our hypothesis is it will increase in value. So you might not want to convert all of it to fiat, but if you ever need to, you have that option. So there's ways in which people could buy Lift tokens and then fund a project, and they could benefit from these state-of-the-art AI agents, and then do with it what they please. So, for example, let's say I want to start a company in there. I contribute, I can raise seed fund or contribute my own capital and buy maybe $200,000 of Lift tokens, and then hire like a, developer to kind of augment what I'm doing, or some product manager or some specialist in the field. Let's say, like I was mentioning, like civil law or something like that. I could hire a lawyer or something like that. And so you're bringing in kind of specialists, and then you have kind of this fair and equitable kind of payment structure. And then, they still get credit. And it's just like some of the similar perks of working in another venture, with the added benefit of being very fast, very sustainable, and like, for lack of a better word, futuristic. So, and then there'll probably be offshoot ideas or projects from that. It's very fertile. So it's like each project doesn't necessarily live in a vacuum. So it's a constant growth, just like nature.
Wow. Okay, that actually answers my question. So, David, just to help maybe other entrepreneurs who are also trying to watch this, maybe budding entrepreneurs, I wanted to know. So there has been a lot of talk about AI in the last few years, and especially now, people sometimes really understand what it means, and sometimes they call something AI and it's not really AI. And if, as a budding entrepreneur now today, if I want to actually incorporate AI or build something on it, what is the actual methodology to do it? Like, what do I need in terms of resources? What do I need in terms of people? What do I need in terms of technology? Because earlier we used to think that when Sam Altman also came to India and he said that you can't, no one else can do what we did because we spent so much money. And then DeepSeek came and everyone was so shook, right? Uh, how much do you like? What do you actually need to actually start building something? How will like in terms of resources, people, and technology is what I'm asking. Like, what do you need to build an AI? Just to, if you can, help me understand that, and then maybe the viewers will also understand.
Sure. Well, I can't speak to like creating your own AI model, but I do think that competition is good. It's good for everybody. And after DeepSeek announced the R1 model, you saw, I think, OpenAI start acting correct, and they realized, okay, we've got to lower the pricing, we've got to improve, and I think it's a win-win for humanity. Of course, these technologies, any progress is going to have risks. That's a given. Nuclear energy has risks. Automobiles have risk. Like everything has risk. But I think the more of it, the more that you see people have new ideas and new mistakes. And so I think that DeepSeek is from what I understand, an incredible addition to the global AI family, if you will. And hopefully there's more to come. But one thing that it did, like it was more efficient, and it thought like of using active inference. It thought in a more intelligent way, kind of, I guess, approximately how we think as people. You know, we have a pretty efficient quantum computer in our heads that runs on like a couple watts. I forget how many, but you know, pretty low energy. So hopefully that's where we're going and beyond. But in terms of like what you need to leverage AI, like for business, etc., you have a few options. I mean, in terms of like what your goal is. So one, you have a lot of models to choose from. You've got Grok 3, Claude Sonnet 3.7, any number of the chat GPTs. I think they're going to combine them starting with 5. Right now there's loads, 03, 01, you know, 4.5, 4.0, et cetera, minis and pro versions of all those. And then each of the models have their deep research function, which essentially just lets the model think longer and typically provides a longer and more robust and I think higher accuracy answer. In Gemini, of course, I don't mean to, it's funny, I read this article recently that said we're sleeping on Google, because Google was so dominant with search and of course buying YouTube and Gmail. And then it seemed like ChatGPT ate Google's lunch. And then of course Perplexity even more so. And what, again, competition. So Google had to go back to the drawing board and think, okay, we've got to start, you know, getting serious. And then you're looking at the AI video generation coming out of Google, training on all the YouTube data, and it's incredible. And that's just the first like version. I mean, it's going to be, it is a wild time to be alive. I'm really looking forward to seeing like what happens these next few years. And then also with Gemini, I think Google, as I understand, their API calls are actually cheaper than DeepSeek's. And they're coming out with a new version as well. Pretty, you know, they have a lot of resources. DeepMind was way ahead of the game. And as I understand, we're not seeing all that DeepMind is capable of. They're rolling it out very cautiously. And I don't know how much of that is kind of for hype, but from what I've heard from like Mo Gadat and a few others, is that what they've seen of like behind the scenes of Google would like terrify you. And it's like the public is not ready, which I get. I don't know if that's like hype. Like when Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, was saying, you know, he thinks AI is going to eat software's lunch. I think there's some truth to that, but I also think he has a vested interest in making that kind of hype because he's, you know, heavily invested in both the Copilot and ChatGPT, et cetera. So, you know, like usual, the truth is somewhere in the middle. I remember when the internet became a booming thing and people said, you know, they had these wild predictions in 2 years, like everything's going to change. And it turned out that everything did change, but it didn't quite happen at the time that they thought it would. It took about like 5 times longer or something like that. But now I think that like roadmap is going to be shortened significantly because of the speed and because all the players are kind of on the board. Before you had pockets that weren't necessarily contributing, whereas now I think for, you know, there's exceptions, of course, but making like a kind of a broad statement that most of the world has its eyes open and like people are like contributing, like you're collaborating pretty much globally now in one way or another. So sorry, that was just something interesting. Going back to your question, as far as what you need. So I would use some of those models, but don't, I mean, I guess you could choose your favorite one. I tend to use them like, so with news, for example, I try not to watch my news all from one source. I try to mix it up because the truth is usually somewhere in between. Quick analogy, anecdote. When I lived in Japan with a buddy of mine, a Japanese friend, the same age as me, he and I were roommates for 2 years, and he used to like talking about like the war from two different perspectives, because Japan and the U.S. were enemies in World War II. Of course, we're friends now, but we kind of knew that like what we learned in high school was one version of the truth, and we like would compare notes, and it was really interesting to see what each other learned, because there's some truth to it, but also kind of selective storytelling to kind of have a certain narrative. And so similarly with like news, I look at it the same way, and same with ales. I look at it the same way. They have different parameters, different weighting, and you'll get different answers for better or worse. So if I have something important, I'll put it into Claude and ChatGPT, Gemini and Grok, and kind of compare them. Or sometimes I'll cross-reference. I'll get an answer from ChatGPT. I'll put it through Claude, let's say, or et cetera. And these they kind of move around. Right now, I think Claude's better in many respects, but these models will have different advantages in different times. And so you could run your business model through there and see like, what do I need for an MVP? Do I need to train my own agent? Can I, if you do need an agent with API calls, you could look at perhaps DeepSeek or Gemini, might be the cheapest. And then you could even ask whichever AI model you're using, how much would it cost to do this? And then just validate that answer, like ask a few other models. And then if it's super critical that you get it right, then take that answer to someone in your network or either LinkedIn or somewhere and say, hey, this is what I found, can you just tell me? And oftentimes if it's, we like to learn. So even like a stranger is a specialist, if you give them like a compelling story, not wasting their time, but one sentence, hey, I'm trying to build this. I went through these certain models and they told me this. Does this look right to you? And, maybe one person's too busy to answer, but someone who's really like in that field, they might be, oh, that's really interesting. And they might actually be like, keep me in the loop. Like I'd love to, contribute as an advisor or something like that. So it's like a win-win. But anyway, that's kind of how I begin. And then of course, from there, it really depends on what you're doing.
So David, you talked about, Japan, and so we have been seeing ever since I was little, I've been very fascinated with Japan, and people always say that Japan is living in 2050, Japan is living in 2070, because they have been able to solve so many little day-to-day problems. They have amazing cars, amazing hardware, like everything. Like they've done so much. In the AI space, do we not know anything coming out of Japan, or is Japan not really in the AI game as far as the US or let's say China has done?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not like an expert in that aspect of it, but I do know. Like I went over to Tokyo last year to go meet with some experts in AI through the Boston Global Forum. I'm a board member of, and we have a few partners around the world, and Japan is one of our close partners. So we met with some of the professors from their top university, which is Tokyo University, and that's who met with Sam Altman when he visited when ChatGPT first came on the scene in a big way, and some government officials, etc. So, but there's like anything you probably would expect. There's like layers to how much like you're given as a visitor, even as like a thought partner. It's not necessarily like national security level, etc. So I try not to underestimate anyone. I'm constantly, maybe sounds conceited to say this, but I'm constantly surprised at just how smart everybody is. It's like sometimes you might know like something more than your friend or something like that in one particular domain, sports or whatever your subject is. And we tend to, I don't know if it's like part of nature or what, but we tend to kind of want to create these save states. Like I knew more, on the test that you and I took yesterday. So therefore I'm like save state smarter than you or something. But like, I personally don't think that's a helpful way of looking at it, because that limits me from learning from you. And you know a lot that I don't know, always. That's always going to be the case. And so if you're open to that, and this is one cool thing from the podcast I've noticed, some of the smartest people that I've spoken to are like the most humble. And just being open to, like, I see us now as more like vessels, and there's like knowledge and consciousness, like almost passing like electricity just through, and you can be there to participate in it. But as soon as you think you own it, as soon as you think it is you, I think that's when you kind of close yourself off to the true kind of journey. So yeah, I think that that's just important to keep in mind.
That makes sense. You said like you almost spent a decade in Japan, right? And so do you feel like culturally, obviously there are a lot of differences between the two countries, but do you think like there is something that you learn from there that you still have with you and apply everywhere that you go?
Yes. Yeah. Japan was a profound, like a transformative period in my life. So I don't know if this is universal or if this is kind of just the way it happened for me, but I never felt smarter and more kind of, I don't know, secure or in control than when I graduated undergrad university. I was in my early 20s. I spoke really quickly. I had a big vocabulary. I knew this or that, or so I thought. And it seemed like, everything made sense. And I was going to just succeed. And then as I started traveling, I realized that my kind of map of reality was very limited. All the history that I learned, the language that I learned was circumstantial. It was subjective. And that was really bizarre. It's almost like learning that gravity is subjective. It's like, what? Like one day I'm 70 kilos and the next I'm like an orange. Like it's just like a different unit of measure and a different reality. It's really disorienting. But I remember about 3 months into my time living in Japan, I struggling with the language. It's for English speakers, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, and Arabic, I believe, are among the hardest languages to learn because everything is the opposite pretty much. You don't really have a point of comfort to branch out from. So I thought, okay, I'll get a vocabulary book and I'll just learn all the words I can, and then naturally I'll be able to communicate. And that's not how it works. Like a language is like a living thing. You have to understand the culture, how to make a joke, how to frame an argument, etc. And that was just really humbling. And I'd see like children walking by and they knew more than me. And that was also really humbling because I thought I was complete. I thought I was an adult. I knew everything. And I basically realized I had to boot up this Japanese app, this Japanese David in my mind, because English David or American David didn't really work. It's like you need a converter to use the electrical outlet there. And then here's where I had this epiphany. That's all I ever was. I was just an app. I just happened to be born in a place where my operating system that I was booted up with was English. My operating system I was booted up with was American history, etc. But if I was in India, or if I was in Nigeria, or if I was in Brazil, etc., it would be a different app. And then I realized, like, I don't know anything. There's so much that I have to learn. And there's like 196 countries that I have to live in now in order to try to learn this. And I'd only have so much time. So I all of a sudden felt this urgency. It's almost like, climbing up a hill and thinking you're top of the mountain. You realize it keeps going. So after a couple years in Japan, I went to Korea. I lived a couple years there. The plan was to do China and then India and then as many countries as I could before I died, because I just felt like this dearth of knowledge. It's like I realized I don't know anything. After 2 years in Korea, the weird thing happened where Japan wasn't the same Japan I knew anymore. Now I had a different reference point. So then I wanted to visit Japan again. And then I realized, like, it's limitless. The learning and the journey, and even if you stay in the place, you're growing, you just don't realize it. And that's kind of unnerving for expats that have lived abroad for a while. Myself and others that I've spoken to have lived abroad for, say, more than 3 years, is you reach a point where you can never really truly go back home. you can visit your grandparents and your parents and all of that, but they have changed. The politics have changed. The news stories have changed. The history has changed a little bit. It's almost like they're ships in the ocean that have gone off in different directions. And so you go back to where the ship used to be, but it's not there anymore. And then you go to where the ship is and you try to bring it back and they're like, we're not there anymore. So you're essentially living in a ghost world. The memories that you knew it's different because the people that still live there, they were watching it change gradually. So their reality is mapped to where you left, but yours isn't. So it essentially, it's like you're in the margins, and it's fascinating because it allows you to kind of look at different kind of cultures or experiences in a new light, but everything comes at a cost. And it comes at the cost of, if you look at like a tree, like with its roots, just being there, it's like, you're not that anymore. You're more like rain or something that is part of nature, but it's kind of like on a different level to some extent. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that was really interesting. And that was a profound realization I had in Japan. And maybe the way that you meant the question as well, one thing I took away was the impermanence of everything, the ethereal nature of life. Japan really focuses on that more than the United States, and they cherish these moments. For example, in their tea ceremony, they have this phrase, ichigo ichie, basically roughly translates to, this moment will never be repeated. It's only for this moment. And you might see them kind of celebrate the cherry blossoms or the autumn colors, which are very fickle. Like if a rain or strong wind comes, they'll blow away. So it only lasts for a couple of days in good weather. And the changing kind of like the age, like when someone comes of age at 3, 5, 7, 20 years, etc. So it's just like this observation of the passage of time and just cherishing this moment, and just a focus on things that you would just kind of ignore in my kind of understanding of the West, broadly speaking, and certainly the US. So for example, like white rice, like I would ask some of my Japanese friends, like, what's your favorite food? And a few of them answered rice. And I was like, rice and what? Rice and curry? Rice and like no, just rice. And that just blew my mind, because I thought you needed something more robust. After living there for years, I started to gain an appreciation for the subtle textures and the smells and the flavors of the different rice from the different regions. And we all have this ability. It's just when you remove distraction, it's kind of like meditation, but in some sense, it's like meditation in your daily life. And that's something else I took. So I guess coming back to the West now, I think of this kind of concept of how you do one thing is how you do everything. And the Japanese have this attention to detail that I try to keep in mind.
So yeah, I mean, so I heard all of it, and I totally agree with you with the fact that we have a similar saying in India as well. That you can always try to go back home, but it's just your memory of home. It's not actually home. So yeah, I totally get that. But David, so that brings me to, so where is home for you? So where did you grow up? And how was your family like?
I grew up in Southern California. I was born in Los Angeles and split my time between Orange County and Los Angeles. They're neighboring counties, probably 45 minutes by car. And I thought if I could pick up a British accent, I'd be like an exoskeleton. And friends were going to Japan, and they said, come with us to Japan. You can always go to England another time. I was like, oh, fair enough. So I went there with no plan. I didn't have a list. Oh, I want to see this. I want to try that. It was just following them. And I think that was really the key, because I had no expectations. I was present in the moment, and it just blew my mind. Just every single little thing. And that led to learning who I was, and just so much growth. And then I guess, long story short, that kind of, like I mentioned with the pandemic, put me in Canada. Now, my family, kind of interesting. My step grandpa is Punjabi. He went to Belgium. I forget the name of the school, but a university for art when he was 19. He left India for Belgium, got his degree in art, I think painting, and then went to Canada. My grandma's Croatian, and she fled Yugoslavia. It was basically after World War One. These Slavic countries were put together into one country, and it had a authoritarian government. I mean, this is her version told to me, so do your own research. But from what she told me, they had an authoritarian government, and you couldn't criticize it. And one way that they enforced that is reward people for telling on each other. And so my uncle, my grandma's brother, I guess great uncle, I forget how we say it in English, but my grandma's brother, let's say, wrote in his diary something critical about the government. Maybe did many things, I don't know. But my grandma told me that was what he and his best friend told the authorities. They arrested him. He's in prison. Then the family is like blacklisted as being like kind of enemies of the state or whatever. And my grandma was an athlete. So she qualified for the Olympics as a sprinter. I think it was the Helsinki Olympics. I forget the year, 56 or something like that. And the government wouldn't let her go because the family was blacklisted. So her mom said, my great grandma said, you have to escape. You'll never reach your potential here. So she left when she was 19 through Italy, then Portugal, over to Canada. And she met my step-grandpa in Canada. He was a painter. She was an animator. She studied animation at the University of Zagreb, Croatia. And she won this, I guess, animation prize at a Toronto Animation Festival or something like that. And it got the attention of this Hollywood director named Bill Hanna of Hanna-Barbera. There's an animation studio in Hollywood, California that did like the Flintstones and some other popular cartoons at the time. And he said, well, come down to Hollywood. I'll pay for you and your team to come down here. So my step-grandpa and a few others, she brought down to Los Angeles, Hollywood and Los Angeles, California. And then I should mention actually really quick, this is probably a common immigrant experience, but I think it's still impressive. When she arrived in Canada, she didn't speak English.
Yeah.
And so she learned English, the humble beginnings, picking worms for fishermen and drying and washing dishes in restaurants and stuff. Won this festival, this award, went to Hollywood, got her master's at UCLA, which is a pretty good school in the US and globally, I think. Became a professor at UCLA and CalArts, which is a Disney private university. Became, she said, the first female animation director. I'm not positive about the facts there, but let's say one of, if not the first. So pretty like breaking down barriers kind of. And so just didn't let the world tell her no. And she eventually became a member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and voted on the Academy Awards and sent me and my brother after I graduated university to the Academy Awards as like a celebration, which is just a really cool journey that any human being, if you just don't let the world tell you no, just don't give up, figure out what you need to do, you can make it happen. And if not, you'll at least have one hell of a story and an adventure. So I always admired my grandma and my grandpa. They both passed a couple years ago, but they were like heroes of mine and kind of nomadic in a sense. Like they would always split their time between like India, Croatia. My step grandpa had some family in England, so they go there, and then North and South California, like near San Francisco and Los Angeles. So I just kind of looked at like the world as like our home, and there's so much to learn, and so that's kind of led to me kind of striking out on my own and discovering. And then when I was going back to when I decided I was going to pursue higher education in the pandemic, I didn't want to go back to the same like location that I got my undergrad in. Kind of going back to what I said about the diversity of thought and using different AI models or watching news from different sources, etc. I thought, ideally, I wanted to go to a different country. And if it was the same continent, a different coast, like maybe East Coast is a slightly different culture than West Coast. But after living in Asia for, like I said, over a decade, I kind of missed like the West Coast, and it was different. Like I said before, like it wasn't the same, and I wasn't the same. So I was like, okay, I want to go West Coast, but not the same place. So then I was looking at San Francisco and Vancouver, and ultimately I settled on Vancouver because of cost primarily. Because again, we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last. So the Canadian dollar is like less than the American dollar, and the cost of tuition at the school I went to is less than a comparable school. So it was a largely cost decision and location. So now I'm in Vancouver. That's where I'm calling you from.
Oh, so you live in Vancouver right now, and so all these years of adventure and travel. So did you finally settle down, have a family? Do you have a wife and kids?
No, I didn't settle down. I do have a partner, but no kids. That's perhaps I think a longer story, but the short story would be I had some growing up to do myself, and I didn't want to like make mistakes. I know we all make mistakes, but I didn't want like my children to like. I felt like I had to do some homework before I had kids, and with where I am now, I travel often to the States and globally. Like I have some business partners in Italy. I mentioned I went to Japan probably once a year. So I still travel quite a bit. But you know, we'll see what the future holds. I'm not certain that how long I'll stay put here, but I've got that. My mom used to tease or joke that we had gypsy blood, like nomads.
So your parents still live in the US?
Well, my mom has passed, and my stepdad is in the US. Yeah, visited him last year, and we talk every couple of months.
So, you know, like you do so many things. You are a busy person, so and you know, spending time with your partner. I'm sure that is also important to you. And so, how do you have a way in which you manage your time? Do you have a strict schedule and a to-do list, and you do all that, or you just kind of go with the flow, try to spend time everywhere, or are you just a workaholic? So,
good question. I'd say like all of the above. Balance is always elusive. I'm trying to optimize the way that I spend my time and focus on the most pressing task. But I could do better with prioritization. So that's an area that I try to improve upon. But I keep like a to-do list, almost like sprints, you know, like for a product management type of system. And that's essentially what I have. And it just keeps extending into like a multi-page document. So I mean, it works for me. But I'm just trying to optimize it. And that's another area where I intend to use AI to help me manage my time better.
So, David, before I let you go, we do have a small segment in this podcast which is called the rapid fire questions. So basically, I'll ask 5 questions to you, and you have to quickly answer. All right.
Okay. Try my best.
All right. So the first question that I have for you is, okay, tell me one thing that you miss about Japan.
There's a lot. Optionality.
Optionality. And what does optionality mean to you?
The city like Tokyo, for example, you can just do anything. It's so massive. You can spend the rest of your life in Tokyo and never get bored. Vancouver is beautiful, but it's a lot smaller.
Tell me one overhyped AI trend.
One overhyped AI trend. That's tough. I'd say, I mean, this is changing, but thinking that it's going to write your blogs for you or like right out of the box. I think there's some more work to be done there.
Yeah, a lot of people need to hear that. Which country have you still not explored and you really want to explore? India.
India.
You never been to India?
No. Now my grandpa said, don't go in the, like only go between November and February. Yeah. So I remember that, but I haven't had a chance to visit yet. I hope to though.
And so people or process, what is more important in a company?
Oh, good question. I mean, again, it's two things being true at once, but I'd say if you had to choose only one, people always.
And final question, one advice that you would want to give to other founders?
Okay, there's a lot. Like, I'm trying to think of how to put this in a concise way, but like, just do it. Like, even if it's not perfect, like you'll learn as you go. Like nothing is perfect. Just do it. Just act, and the motion will create the that you need.
Well, those are great answers, David. I honestly had a great time chatting with you. I definitely think we should have a lot more conversations. I really hope we can, we can have a conversation again. I'll try to get a hold of you again. But thank you so much for coming here. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. See you around, man.